Hello and welcome everyone. It's Banlist season here in Duel Links, and we have just received the Forbidden and Limited List update with a skill balance on top of that. These are going to go into effect between June 19th and the 22nd for the skills, and June 28th for the cards. Now that means that we're not going to have to wait too terribly long. However, most tournaments within the community will be implementing these changes immediately, at least those that are possible. Now, full disclosure, I have been spoiled on everything, so this is more going to be talking about the potential impact of the changes as opposed to being surprised by them. I do believe a lot of these were the kind of changes that players were expecting. However, let's dive right in. In the skill balancing update, we're going to be getting 4 changes. 3 of them are going to be a buff, and 1 of those is going to be a nerf. Skills receiving a buff: Red Eyes Roulette, Zexal Ultimate Unite, Holly Angel Trick, and the skill receiving a nerf is going to be Master of Rites 2. Now, Red Eyes Roulette, the only change here is that instead of receiving any Red Eyes card, it will be specifically a Red Eyes spell and trap. Now, the impact of this is going to be that instead of randomly drawing a regular Red Eyes, you are most likely going to draw either a Red Eyes Fusion, a Red Eyes Insight, or a Red Eyes Fang with Chain. So you are almost always going to be assured that that card off of the skill search is going to be an impactful one, as 2 of those will lead to a fusion, and 1 of those will give you some control of the battlefield. This is a very good change. Will it make Red Eyes meta? Probably not, but we have seen Red Eyes decks perform as a strong rogue option when duelists are not anticipating it. So I do expect that you will see Red Eyes decks popping up a little bit more, especially when you consider that overall the meta is going to be depowered a little bit. Zexal Ultimate Unite. The primary change here is that in addition to Utopia Ray and ZW Leo Arms, it is also adding number 39 Utopia to the extra deck. This means that the pure Onomat decks that were running Warrior of Hope number 39, because they didn't really have another skill that they wanted to run, can instead go for the Ultimate Unite and have are encouraged to potentially do so because of the other strong effects of the skill. Now, I don't know if this will make it the go-to skill for Onomats, but it is a much stronger option, as you are getting 3 extra Xyzes into your extra deck, which cannot be discounted. As that will put it from 8 to 11. And when you're playing a toolbox style deck, that is really, really good. And there are obviously plenty of strong number and ZW monsters. Overall, though, nice change, but don't expect it to make a huge splash. Now, this one right here, Holly Angel Trick, is a hilarious one. There have been 2 times that Konami has looked at play patterns of duelists within the game and said to themselves, we're going to go ahead and lean into that as opposed to try and force change ourselves. That would be with Black Wings. Players would, instead of playing Crow, would play OG Kaiba for the Mountain Field spell to get that attack boost, which made your searches off of Whirlwind stronger. So they gave Mountain and an additional buff on top of that to Crow to encourage players to play the appropriate character. Now they have gone and done the same thing with Trick Stars. Rather than playing Blue Angel, people have been using Playmaker because 3 effects would allow you to gain 2,000 life points and activate Crimson Heart's effect to draw 2. What they have gone and done is essentially add that exact same effect, narrowing it to specifically a Trickstar Link monster, and tacked it onto the Holly Angel Trick skill. Now, there is something to be said that you may still want to use 3 effects simply for you may have a situation where you want the battle protection, for example. However, this will give people who just want to be able to play the same deck, but also use a thematically appropriate character, the ability to do so. This is a very good change, where they recognized that in Duel Links, the play pattern of a deck changed compared to how it was in the OCG, TCG, or Master Duel, and they are leaning into it rather than fighting it. Very good change. I'm happy about that one. Master of Rites 2 is receiving a fairly substantial nerf. Instead of beginning the duel, or rather your turn, with the Ritual Cage on the field, you cannot activate it until you lose 1,500 life points, and then you have to return 1 card from your hand to the deck to set the Ritual Cage. They say that they're doing this because of the strength of ritual cards, which is kind of laughable. What this most likely is hinting at is that the rarity change to pre-preparation of rites, and most likely some kind of ritual deck in the next upcoming box will mean that Ritual Cage potentially will be too strong. So while it is unfortunate to see a nerf to a skill like this, it does potentially herald some pretty interesting changes in the near future. Your guess is as good as mine as to what ritual archetype they feel that would be too good with Ritual Cage. Because otherwise, the only really deck you would ever see is Nekroz. They could buff Nekroz. Perhaps they're going to get something like the Nekroz of Colossus or something. But even then, I don't think that would justify it. So let's go ahead and look at the Forbidden and Limited list. Now, this is going to be a fairly substantial one. Going into this ban list, Orcust was by far the best deck in all its various versions. You saw some experimentation early on with stuff like Gandora Orcust. It morphed into other versions such as the Garbage Lord version, which would use Guardian's Call and Garden Eatos. Mermaid is a heck of a card, and probably needed to be dealt with sooner rather than later if you wanted to open the metagame up again. And sure enough, Forbidden Nightmare Mermaid. This card is being banned to improve deck building diversity, as its usage rate remains high even at limit 1. Yeah, no joke. Konami wanted duelists to choose between Mermaid and Babel and make that a decision, but it was pretty much a non-choice from the very beginning. Nightmare Mermaid simply allowed too consistent of a splash of the Orcust engine in literally any other deck. So by removing it, it does force Orcust specifically to play pure or in a much reduced and weakened state. This is essentially a required change. This had to happen. The only other possibility was to nerf the card draw, perhaps put Orchestrated Return to 1. But even then, you probably would just continue to play Mermaid and have a weakened back row lineup. But good hit. This does not single-handedly kill Orcust, but it does force it into some much more narrow niches of play. Now onto the limited one section. We have the Doom Rider. This change is primarily aimed at the Raging Pendulum Orcust version of the deck. By putting this to 1, in addition to the other limited to 1 cards that the deck is going to have to consider, means that you will no longer have a strong splash with the Orcust engine. A bit of a spoiler here. There is another limit 1, which means that if you are playing Raging Pendulum Orcust, you are going to have to choose between the Doom Rider, between Babel, or between Orchestrated Release, which is a fairly substantial limitation on the overall power of the deck. Now, I think the choice is pretty much between Doom Rider and Babel. And it remains to be seen which of those two will remain the correct one. I have a feeling it's probably gonna be Doom Rider, but that will remain to be seen. One of the deck lists that saw some success during the WCS was Orcust Onomat. So they are hitting that variation of the deck as well. Gaga Revenge going to limited to 1. This will make it very difficult for Orcust variants of the deck with the Onomat engine to work, not only because of the limitation on Revenge to 1 conflicting with Release and or Babel, but on top of that, you have other hits on the list to consider. This doesn't really affect the pure version of Onomat. They sometimes would play 2 Revenge. But the deck's perfectly fine and functional with only 1. Farfa. Farfa going to 1 is a form of a buff because of other changes to the Burning Abyss deck list. Before, it conflicted with Seer, so you would have to choose some variation of 2 Farfa, 1 Seer, or 2 Seer, 1 Farfa. By putting Farfa to 1, that will now occupy the limited to 1 slot for Burning Abyss. This is a perfectly fine change. Farfa is a strong card in that deck list, but the other changes the deck has received more than compensates for this change. Limited to 2, Harakiri Merchant. This here was on the ban list for way too long. Harakiri, one of the first true build-a-board combo variants, hit extremely quickly. Konami was not happy with that deck list. Probably could have been unlimited well before now, but they were hesitant to do so. Karakuri is not going to come back into the meta because of this, but it is a nice little buff to those enthusiasts who would like to have an opportunity to try and do something with it. A good hit probably could come off of the ban list entirely. Moray of Greed. This is hilarious. Water Xyz, Mermail Atlantean, as it has become known, got hit very quickly got hit fairly recently due to its ability to put up really strong boards fairly easily. It was a consistency boost to a deck that has come in and out of the meta multiple times. Mermail Atlantean Water Xyz is a perfectly fine deck. Whenever it's good, it's usually just because you've had a ban list reset and the meta game has not stabilized. The deck usually falls out of favor thereafter. It doesn't need these kind of hits. Moray of Greed coming back to 2, perfectly fine. Speedroid Double Yo-Yo. People were unsure if we were going to get any Speedroid hits as the deck is still very new. I personally really like the deck. I think it is good. I think the mirror is unfortunately kind of cringe. However, most other matchups tend to be fairly interesting. So I do commend Konami on this at not hitting it too hard while acknowledging that it can put up some fairly strong boards. Limit 2 does not conflict with anything, so you're just going to reduce double yo-yo from 3 to 2 and find one more slot. Probably another level 4 or something, or level 3 of some kind to allow more plays. But overall, going from 3 win, 3 yo-yo to 3 win, 2 yo-yo, this is fine. This is fine. The deck will do perfectly fine. It will reduce the overall ability for it to grind, and it may necessitate puzzle plays to recycle the yo-yo more often. This is perfectly fine. Limited to 3, we are hitting Tour Guide. Now, Tour Guide is only available at 1 anyways, so this is more of a functionality change as opposed to anything else. Spoilers, the Beatrice is limited to 3 as well. That means that you are going to be playing 1 Tour Guide, 3 Beatrice, and then no other limit 3s, because again, spoiler, Seer has been removed from the list, which means that all this really does is remove the Beatrice engine or severely limit it in decks that would also want to play limit 3s. But that's kind of whatever. Neither here nor there, in my opinion. Also a hit to Orchest variants, rather, with Orchest Onomat variants, because they would play Beatrice to help with that. Silver Rocket. This is a fairly light hit to Rockets. Rockets were one of the dominant decks of the WCS. Silver Rocket's ability to rip an extra deck monster is also kind of cringe. However, most decks could still function even if that happened, and it was usually a fairly heavy investment of resources from the turn 1 player. Most likely what you're going to see is Silver Rocket being played at 1 or 2, and then you will reduce your limit 3 traps appropriately. This probably does depower Rockets fairly significantly, perhaps force them to go back to a much heavier needle sealing variant. But overall, the deck should still be fine. That remains to be seen. I think the question will be 1 or 2. Do you play 1 or 2 of these? Maybe you want to play 1 so you can still play 2 limit 3 trap cards. Scrap Recycler, the other major hit to the Orchest engine. By putting this to 3, you are effectively removing limit 3 traps from the Orchest lineup. This is a devastating hit, because they will now have to rely on traps and cards that you saw Mech Knights go to when they lost their limit 3s. So instead of your IDPs and your Compulses, your Crackdowns, you're going to see them playing stuff like Canadia, going for the book effect. That definitely does weaken the deck as a whole. Really strong hit, further reducing the overall power and consistency of Orchest decks in the metagame. Good hit, happy to see it. Tatsunoku, another limitation that was being rescinded. This was aimed squarely at Synchrons. You're now going to be able to go for the Rocco Dragon plays if you want to in Synchron. By putting this to 3, you could play 1 copy of this and then some combination of tuning and Jet Synchron. So do consider that Synchrons may come back into the meta specifically because of this change. Now, obviously, the question is, do you want to play Croco Dragon for the draw and the pop, or do you prefer Crystal Wing, which is what they have been doing? It's debatable. You could very easily get a significant draw off of the Croc. So you might have an actual deck building question there on which variant you want to go for. Good change. I'm happy to see that. Synchrons did not need to be hit as hard as they were, in my opinion. Pendulum Call to 3. This doesn't really affect the pure version of the deck, but it does mean that you cannot play it in combination with Scrap Recycler for the Orcus variant. Pendulum Call is the bread and butter of Raging Pendulum, so you will definitely want to see this as often as possible, and thus run it at 3. That does mean that the Raging Pendulum version of the decks will have to just hard draw the Orcus side of the deck that you would need to make your Galatea plays. So you will see Scrap Recycler removed, probably running full copies of Orchestrated Return, your Nightmare, Orcus Nightmare. It is level 7, so it can be made part of your plays. However, do keep in mind that because Doom Rider is at 1, you will have to make a decision between release Doom Rider Babel as your limit 1 card. So, yeah. Still going to be an extremely strong version of the deck, I believe, just because of the advantage that Raging Pendulum gives you. Here is the really scary part. Removed from the list. Goki Rematch and Goki Finishing Move. That means that no longer are you forced to play one copy of each of these along with your main Goki monster. But I think people forget how strong Goki was. Now, obviously, the metagame has changed since then. But one of the main ways that people are dealing with negate boards, such as Crystal Wing from Speedroid and the like, is with cards like Book of Moon because of their universal applicability. Goki was the deck that forced cards like that out of the meta. And by Goki potentially returning and being a very strong OTK capable deck that has access to a negate, this might really shake up the metagame more than anything other than the hits to Orcus. This is scary. This is a good change for people who invested in the deck before. So I'm obviously happy for that. But oh my goodness, I am scared of what this potentially means. We might have to be main decking Chalice again as part of our packages, just to deal with Goki. Crystron Impact coming off of the list means that the deck is essentially completely freed. They did Scrap Recycler was hit again, but they're not playing any limit 3s otherwise, so I think you can safely play Scrap Recycler. It's Crystron though. Fun deck, but not really part of the meta. Nice to see this change. Cynet Crosswipe, Salamence Great Code Talker is back on the table because of this. I'm personally happy. I had no problem with Salamence Great Code Talker as a deck. I think removing it from the metagame was a mistake. By returning this to their pool of cards, I do think that is a legit and viable variation of the deck, and it will probably sneak its way back onto the tier list, back into the meta. Remains to be seen. Of course, the meta has shifted and changed since then, but we saw some niche play of Pure Code Talker in some recent tournaments, so opening up the Salad, which was the superior version, is really cool to see. I'm very happy about that, and that comes from somebody who is not a huge fan of Salad. Swallow's Nest, good removal. I don't think this is going to change anything. Raid Raptor can play it. They could before, but The big problems with Swallow's Nest and Raid Raptor is the fact that your choke point is your Xyz monster, so any good player would just wait for you to make your first Xyz and then disrupt that. So it does help you at unbricking hands, but Raid Raptors have been fairly consistent ever since they got Strangulanius, so I don't really see this as an issue. It's technically a buff to Harpies, but I don't think that's going to do anything. Who knows, perhaps. Harpies also do have access to, like, Win and Summoner Monk, so who knows, maybe somebody can make it work. I doubt it. But, yeah, this can come off the list, no problem. Seer, that's part of giving full access of the Burning Abyss cards back to pure Burning Abyss. Perfectly fine change. That deck is fine. Raid Raptor Strangulanius. This card should have never been pre-limited. I don't know what Konami was thinking. They were worried that maybe like Orcust variants would play it or something, or that Raid Raptor would be too strong and be able to play like limit 3 traps on top of their like Build-A-Board combo deck. This is whatever. You probably still won't even see them playing the limit 3 traps. So functionally this changes nothing, but gives the deck more options, and that's never a bad thing. Konami, please. I loved the Master of Destiny deck. That deck could be fully unlimited and it would not do anything in this meta. Just revert the skill change, revert the ban list hits. Let us flip coins again. It's whatever. And yeah, that's the full ban list changes. Orcus depowered. Raging Pendulum, Orcus depowered. Speedroid, minor consistency hit. Rocket, losing a couple limit 3 traps. Synchron's back on the menu. Goki, Monka W, the finisher is coming. Crosswipe, Salamangreat Code Talker back on the menu. And yeah, this should allow for a fairly interesting metagame to develop in the near future. Remains to be seen if people will find a way to break Orcust despite these changes. Probably, but nowhere to the degree that it currently has been. So yeah, let me know what you think. Appreciate you guys watching this scuffed version of a ban list impact review. And do be sure to check out all the tournaments we host over on twitch.tv/grandharrier. You can find how to join the Discord and get in on these free events. Come show us your version of whatever your favorite new deck is. See you there.